My sister raises her 3 kids with no rules or boundaries, and they ruin every single family gathering. When I refused to buy them Christmas gifts, she accused me of mistreating her children. I'm 30F, and my sister Laura is 34F. She has 3 kids: Ethan, 12M, Sophie, 10F, and Chloe, 7F. Yes, those are their actual names, and yes, they probably give you a sense of where this is going. Laura has been married to her husband Mark for about 12 years, and they both have steady jobs. They're not struggling financially at all. I need to give you the full picture of what I've been dealing with for years, because this Christmas situation didn't happen out of nowhere. It started when Ethan was around 4. Laura decided that traditional parenting was too restrictive, and that she wanted to raise free-thinking, empowered children. What that actually meant was that these kids have never really been told no in their lives. And I mean that literally. Laura and Mark use what they call gentle redirection instead of setting actual boundaries. The first time I realized how bad it was getting was at Ethan's 6th birthday party at a pizza arcade. He saw another child playing a game he wanted, walked right up, and pushed the kid off the machine. When the other child started crying and his parents came over, Laura said to Ethan, "I can see you really want to play that game, and your feelings are valid, but maybe we can find a way for everyone to enjoy it." No apology to the other family. No consequences for Ethan. The other parents looked at her with disgust. But it got worse. At family gatherings, these kids treat everyone's homes like their personal playgrounds. Last Easter at our parents' house, Sophie decided she didn't like the ham our mom made, so she threw her entire plate on the floor and demanded chicken nuggets. Instead of disciplining her or asking her to clean up, Laura asked our mom if she had any nuggets. When she said no, Laura actually sent Mark out to a fast food place to buy some. I watched my 67-year-old mother on her hands and knees, cleaning the mess while Sophie just sat there smirking. Chloe, the 7-year-old, has this thing where she screams, ear-piercing shrieks, whenever she doesn't get exactly what she wants, exactly when she wants it. At my cousin's wedding last summer, she had a meltdown during the ceremony because she wanted to hold the bride's flowers. Laura's solution? She walked up to the altar in the middle of the vows and asked the bride if Chloe could hold the bouquet just for a minute. The bride was too shocked to say no, so Chloe spent half the ceremony waving around a $300 bouquet. Now, here's where it gets personal for me. I'm child-free by choice, but I've always been the fun aunt who spoils the kids in our extended family. I love children, I just don't want my own. But with Laura's kids, every interaction feels like walking through a minefield. 2 years ago, I took all 3 of them to the zoo for Ethan's birthday. I spent over $200 on tickets, food, and souvenirs. Chloe then decided she wanted a giant teddy bear from the gift shop that cost $45. When I explained that I'd already bought each of them a souvenir and that was enough, she threw herself on the floor screaming like it was a life-or-death situation. Ethan jumped in saying it wasn't fair that Chloe was upset, and Sophie started crying that the screaming was hurting her ears. Instead of leaving or disciplining Chloe, I gave in and bought the teddy bear just to stop the meltdown. Then Ethan wanted a $60 drone toy because Chloe got something extra, and Sophie wanted a second stuffed animal to match Chloe. By the time we left, I had spent another $150 on top of everything else and felt completely manipulated by children. That was my wake-up call. But it took another 1.5 years before I really put my foot down. The final straw came at my birthday dinner in October. I had made reservations at a nice restaurant. Laura insisted on bringing all 3 kids, which I agreed to at first, but within 10 minutes, it was chaos. Chloe was standing on her chair trying to reach bread from the next table. Ethan was loudly complaining there was nothing on the menu he liked and demanding to know why I hadn't chosen a place with chicken tenders. Sophie was flinging butter packets across the restaurant with her fork. When I asked Laura to please get the kids under control because other diners were staring, she told me I was being judgmental and that kids need to express themselves. Apparently, that included throwing dairy products at strangers. The breaking point came when Chloe knocked over her entire glass of chocolate milk, spilling it all over my white dress and purse. Instead of apologizing or helping clean up, Laura laughed and said, "Well, that's what you get for wearing white around kids." I ended up leaving my own birthday dinner early with a milk-stained dress and a ruined evening. The server looked mortified, and I left a massive tip out of embarrassment. That night, I decided I was done enabling this nonsense. So when Laura texted me in early November asking what I was getting her babies for Christmas, I told her honestly that I wouldn't be buying them gifts this year. She immediately called, asking what she had done wrong. I explained that every interaction with her kids was stressful and that their behavior at my birthday dinner had really hurt me. Laura's response was to tell me I don't understand what it's like to be a parent, that I expect too much from children, and that I was being petty and vindictive by punishing innocent kids for being kids. But here's the thing. I've spent time with plenty of other kids in our family and friend group, and none of them act like this. My cousin's kids are 7 and 9, and they say please and thank you, clean up after themselves, and can sit through a meal without causing a scene. My best friend's 8-year-old helps clear the table and has never once thrown food or knocked things over on purpose. Laura keeps saying her kids are spirited and know their own minds. But what I see are 3 children who have never been taught that other people matter or that actions have consequences. I know Laura's parenting style is her choice, and I'm not trying to change how she raises her children, but I also feel I shouldn't have to fund or reward behavior that ruins every family gathering. My parents keep saying I should be the bigger person, but I feel like I've been the bigger person for years, while these kids learn they can treat people however they want without consequences. At some point, doesn't someone need to show them that actions affect how people want to interact with you? So, Reddit, am I the censored for refusing to buy Christmas presents for kids who never show an ounce of appreciation and whose behavior consistently ruins family events? Update 1. Around 3 p.m., Laura called me screaming. I had to hold the phone away from my ear because she was so loud. Apparently, her friend Sarah follows this subreddit and immediately recognized the story. She sent Laura the link with a text saying, "Girl, is this about you?" Laura read the entire post, all 100 plus comments, and she is livid. She started the call by accusing me of publicly humiliating her and her children on the internet and airing private family business to strangers. She kept yelling about how I made her look like a terrible mother and that I had no right to share personal details about her family. I tried to explain that I hadn't used anyone's real names and that I was genuinely looking for advice, but she wasn't having it. Laura said I was cruel for writing about her kids that way, and that she never realized how much I supposedly resented her family. Then she really went nuclear. She told me she's been protecting me from what people really think about my lifestyle choices, that the whole family sees me as selfish for not having kids, and that I'll never understand real love until I become a mother. She said Mark has always thought I was cold and judgmental, and that they've been walking on eggshells around me for years out of pity. That part honestly hurt more than I expected. I always thought Laura and I were close, despite our differences about parenting, but it got worse. After Laura finished yelling at me, she immediately called our parents and gave them her version of events. By her version, I mean she told them I had posted horrible lies about her children online, that I called them names, and that I mocked them publicly. About 20 minutes later, my mom Helen called me. She was devastated, asking how I could do this to family. She said Laura was hysterical and that the kids were asking why I hated them. When I tried to explain that I never said I hated the kids, only that their behavior was out of control, Mom cut me off. She said that attacking children online was crossing a line she never thought I'd cross. Then my dad Richard called, and he was furious. He said I had betrayed the family and that what happens in the family should stay in the family. He told me Laura is struggling and that instead of supporting her, I went and made her a laughingstock on the internet. He said he was ashamed of how I handled it and demanded that I apologize and delete the post. Here's the thing. I'm not sure I want to apologize, because I didn't lie. Everything I wrote actually happened. But I'm starting to wonder if posting it publicly was the right choice. Laura later texted me screenshots of comments calling her a bad mother and saying her kids sounded like nightmares. She said reading those made her physically sick and that she couldn't even look at her children without hearing strangers' words echoing in her head. She explained that she chose gentle parenting because she grew up with strict discipline, which gave her anxiety and low self-esteem. She told me she never wants her kids to feel the fear and shame she felt, and that she'd rather raise confident, assertive children than kids who are afraid to express their needs. I honestly didn't know Laura felt that way about our childhood. To me, our parents were just normal. They expected us to follow rules and face consequences. I never thought of it as traumatic, but maybe she experienced it differently. Now Laura says she won't bring her kids to Christmas dinner if I'm going to be there, because she doesn't want them around someone who sees them as monsters. My mom is begging me to apologize and take down the post so Christmas isn't ruined. My brother called too, and he was more reasonable. He said he understands why I'm frustrated and admits Laura's kids have behavioral issues, but that posting it online was probably not the best move. He thinks I should apologize for the post itself, but still keep my boundary about not buying Christmas gifts. Mark hasn't contacted me directly, but Laura claims he's disgusted with me and thinks I'm toxic, someone who pretends to care about family while secretly judging them. Apparently, he's been telling Laura for years that I look down on them, and this post was proof. The worst part? Some people online actually found Laura's social media accounts. She had to set everything to private because people were leaving comments on photos of the kids, not outright mean, but sarcastic things like, "such angels," or "so well behaved." Laura is now convinced this will follow her kids forever, that when they're older they'll stumble across this post and be hurt by it. She keeps saying I damaged her children by writing about them like this. I feel terrible that it escalated this far. I genuinely didn't think anyone we knew would see it, and I never wanted Laura to be harassed online. But I'm frustrated too, because she acts like I made everything up, when all I did was describe events that actually happened. Some commenters pointed out that Laura's parenting isn't really gentle parenting at all, but permissive parenting with a nice label. A few even said her kids are going to have a very hard time in the real world if they don't learn that actions have consequences. That made sense to me, but now I'm questioning whether I was wrong to air this publicly, instead of just setting my boundaries privately and dealing with the fallout. The thing is, talking to Laura directly has never worked. Every time I've tried to address her kids' behavior, she gets defensive and turns it into an attack on me. She always says, "You don't understand because you don't have kids." And the conversation ends with me backing down just to keep the peace. I thought maybe hearing perspectives from outside would help me figure out whether I was being unreasonable or expecting too much. But now it feels like I just made everything worse. Mom wants me to post an update saying I was wrong and that Laura is actually a great mother. Dad wants me to delete everything and pretend it never happened. Laura wants a public apology, and for me to admit I lied about her kids. Tomorrow I'm supposed to go to my parents' house for our traditional pre-Christmas cookie baking day, but Laura says she won't come if I'm there. Mom is beside herself, because this is something we've done every year since Laura and I were kids. I don't know what to do. Update 2. Honestly, I don't even know where to start with what happened at Christmas dinner yesterday. I'm writing this from my apartment. First, let me catch you up on what happened between my last update and Christmas. I didn't apologize or take down the post. Probably not the smartest choice for family peace, but I couldn't bring myself to admit to lying when I wasn't. The cookie baking day was canceled because Laura refused to attend if I was there. Mom was heartbroken, calling both of us nonstop to try and mediate, but Laura stood firm. For a while, it looked like Christmas dinner itself would be canceled too. Laura told my parents she wasn't comfortable bringing the kids around me, and Dad was furious at me for ruining Christmas. But then Mom came up with what she called a brilliant solution. Laura and her family could come for Christmas dinner, and I could come later for dessert after they'd left. That way, the kids could still have Christmas with their grandparents without having to see me. I was hurt, basically being banished from my own family's holiday. But I agreed, because I didn't want to be the reason the kids didn't see their grandparents. But Laura changed her mind at the last minute. She decided that me showing up at all, even afterward, was disrespectful. She told Mom my presence would taint the day, because she'd spend the whole time worrying about how I would judge her kids later. So, Mom made another decision. She called me Christmas morning and said Laura was already on her way, but maybe I could just drop by for a few minutes to say Merry Christmas and then leave before things got awkward. I should have said no. I should have just stayed home and watched Netflix like my gut told me. But it was Christmas, and I missed my family. I got to my parents' house around 2 p.m., and the tension was immediate. Laura was in the kitchen helping Mom with dinner prep, and she literally turned her back to me when I said hello. Mark was in the living room with the kids, and he just nodded at me without making eye contact. Mom Helen was trying so hard to keep things normal. She was overly cheerful, asking me about work and my apartment, clearly filling the awkward silence. Dad Richard was civil but cold. He answered if I spoke, but didn't start any conversation. The kids were actually pretty normal at first. Chloe ran up and hugged me like nothing had happened, which honestly made me feel even worse about everything. Ethan and Sophie were distant, probably because their parents had coached them on how to act around me. I had brought a bottle of wine for my parents and some fancy hot chocolate bombs for the kids. Not Christmas gifts, just a peace offering. When I gave them to the kids, Chloe got excited and wanted to make hers right away. Mom said that was fine, and I started to think maybe this could work out. That's when everything fell apart. Chloe wanted her hot chocolate with milk instead of water, so Mom was heating some on the stove. Chloe was bouncing around the kitchen, trying to help, and kept reaching for the pot. Mom and I both told her several times to step back because the stove was hot, but she wasn't listening. Laura was right there, but since she was giving me the silent treatment, she also said nothing to Chloe about stove safety. You can probably guess what happened next. Chloe reached up to grab the pot handle, and even though I caught her arm before she actually touched it, she lost her balance and bumped into the stove. She wasn't burned, but she got scared and started crying. I immediately knelt down to comfort her, and she seemed fine, just startled. But Laura completely lost it. She rushed across the kitchen, pulled Chloe away from me, and started yelling that I had put her daughter in danger. I tried to explain that I was actually preventing Chloe from getting hurt, but Laura began screaming that I had grabbed her child roughly, that I was taking out my anger on an innocent kid. She kept saying I was violent, and that she always knew I would hurt her children eventually. Mark jumped up and got in my face, demanding that I leave immediately. Dad tried to calm things down, but Laura was hysterical, saying I was dangerous and that maybe she should call the police. The worst part was Chloe had already stopped crying and looked confused, asking why everyone was yelling. Then Sophie started crying from the noise. I kept trying to explain what actually happened, but nobody wanted to hear it. Laura had decided I deliberately tried to hurt Chloe, and nothing I said would change her mind. Mom was crying, begging everyone to calm down and reminding us it was Christmas. But Laura was already packing the kids' things and telling Mark to get the car. As they were leaving, Laura turned to me and said I was everything wrong with the family, and that she was done pretending I cared about anyone but myself. She said my Reddit post proved I hated her children, and now I was physically threatening them too. Mark told my parents they'd have to choose between his family and me because he wasn't going to expose his kids to someone who resents their existence. After they left, Dad exploded at me. He said I had destroyed our family, that Laura's kids are the light of his life, and now he might not see them anymore because I couldn't just keep quiet. Mom was sobbing, saying she didn't understand how things had gotten this bad. She kept asking why I couldn't just apologize and make it all go back to normal. I tried to explain again that I hadn't done anything wrong, not with the stove, not with the original post. But Dad cut me off and said if I couldn't see how my behavior was hurting the family, then maybe Mark was right, and I shouldn't be at family gatherings anymore. So I left. I spent Christmas night alone in my apartment, ordering takeout and wondering how preventing a 7-year-old from touching a hot stove had turned into me being banned from my own family. I keep replaying that moment in my head, and I know I didn't grab Chloe harshly or put her in danger. I stopped her from getting burned. In any normal family, that would have earned me a thank you, not accusations of child abuse. But Laura was already primed to see me as the villain because of the Reddit post. She was looking for evidence that I hated her kids, and she interpreted everything through that lens. I get that she's protective, I really do. But the fact that her first thought was, "You tried to hurt my daughter," instead of, "Thank you for keeping her safe," shows how broken our relationship has become. My brother called the next morning to check on me. He hadn't been at dinner. He spent Christmas with his girlfriend's family, but Mom had filled him in. He said it sounded like Laura completely overreacted, but that now the family was fractured and he didn't know how to fix it. He also said Mom is devastated, afraid she'll never see Laura's kids again, and Dad is already talking about excluding me from future holidays to keep the peace. The irony is, if I had just let Chloe grab the pot and get burned, Laura probably would have blamed me for not stopping her. There was literally no way for me to win. Update 3. I'm done. I'm absolutely censored, done with all of this. And I finally said everything I've been holding back for years. Here's what happened. After Christmas, I spent about a week feeling sorry for myself and wondering if maybe I was the problem. I kept thinking about what Dad said about me destroying the family, and I even considered apologizing just to fix things. Then my cousin Megan called me. She was at that wedding last summer where Chloe had the bouquet meltdown, and she had heard about the Christmas disaster. During our conversation, she mentioned something that made my blood boil. Apparently, Laura has been telling the extended family that I attacked Chloe at Christmas dinner and that she's considering taking legal action because I'm unstable and dangerous around children. Legal action for stopping a kid from touching a hot stove. Megan said most of the family doesn't believe Laura's version since they've seen the kids' behavior firsthand, but Laura has been dramatic about it, painting herself as a protective mother defending her children from their abusive aunt. That was the last straw. I drove to Laura's house yesterday afternoon while Mark was at work and the kids were at school. I knew she'd be home. She works part-time and usually has Tuesday afternoons off. When she opened the door and saw me, she immediately tried to close it again, but I put my foot in the doorway and told her we were going to have a conversation whether she liked it or not. She threatened to call the police, but I told her to go ahead. I had plenty to tell them too, about her lies. She let me in but stayed by the door with her phone in hand, like she was ready to call 911 if I so much as moved wrong. The whole thing was so absurd I almost laughed. I sat down on her couch and started talking. I told her I was tired of being painted as the villain, just for having basic expectations about how people should treat others. I said I was sick of her turning every discussion about her kids' behavior into a personal attack, and that I was done walking on eggshells around her family. Laura tried to interrupt with the usual, "You don't have kids, so you don't understand." But I shut that down immediately. I told her I don't need children of my own to recognize when kids are being raised without boundaries or respect for others. Then I really let her have it. I told Laura that what she calls gentle parenting has turned into avoiding discipline under a nicer label. I said she's so afraid of her children experiencing any discomfort or disappointment that she's raising them to believe the world revolves around them. I explained that every other kid I know can sit through a meal, play nicely with others, and show basic gratitude when someone does something kind for them. But her kids act entitled because she's never taught them otherwise. Laura started crying, saying she was doing her best and didn't want her kids to have the same childhood she did. She brought up the strict discipline again, talking about how scared she used to be of disappointing our parents. I told her there's a big difference between harsh discipline and basic boundaries. Teaching kids to say please and thank you isn't abuse, and expecting them not to throw food or destroy other people's property isn't traumatizing. Then I went further. I told her that her kids are going to struggle in the real world because no one else will cater to their every whim the way she does. I said teachers aren't going to gently redirect Ethan when he pushes another child. Sophie's future boss isn't going to run out to buy her something else if she doesn't like what's provided at a work lunch. And Chloe's screaming fits will make it impossible for her to keep friendships or relationships. Laura was sobbing at this point, telling me I was being cruel and that she loves her children and just wants them to be happy. I told her that truly loving your kids means preparing them for life, not shielding them from every single consequence. If she really loves them, she'll teach them how to function in society instead of raising them to think other people exist to serve them. She kept insisting that kids make mistakes, and they're still learning. But I pointed out that they're not learning anything, because she never lets them experience the natural consequences of their actions. When Chloe screamed for the giant teddy bear at the zoo and I bought it, I taught her that screaming works. When Sophie threw her plate at Easter dinner and Grandma cleaned it up while Mark went to get nuggets, they taught her that other people will fix her messes and cater to her demands. I told her that I'm not the problem. The problem is she's so focused on being the cool mom who never says no that she's forgotten her real job is to raise capable human beings, not be her kid's best friend. Laura tried to turn it back on me, saying I clearly hate children and that I'm jealous of her family. She claimed I'm bitter because I'm alone and resent seeing others happy. I laughed and told her that if she thinks her family looks happy to outsiders, she's delusional. I said every family gathering turns into chaos because everyone has to walk on eggshells around her kids. She spends most of each event running damage control while pretending their behavior is normal. I told her that Mark looks miserable half the time, that our parents dread hosting holidays because they have to child-proof their entire house like they're preparing for a tornado, and that other relatives have started making excuses not to attend when her kids will be there. That seemed to hit her. Laura asked me if people really talk about her kids that way, and I told her honestly, yes, they do. I said that Megan's kids ask why they can't act like Ethan, Sophie, and Chloe, and Megan has to explain that different families have different rules. I told her our cousin Daniel stopped inviting kids to his backyard barbecues after Chloe destroyed his garden, and Sophie smeared ketchup on his fence. Laura went quiet for a long time. Then she asked what I wanted from her, if I wanted her to scream at her kids or be harsh like Dad sometimes was. I told her no. I just wanted her to actually be a parent. I wanted her to say no when her kids demand unreasonable things. I wanted her to make them apologize when they hurt or inconvenience others. I wanted her to follow through on consequences instead of just making empty threats. I said I wanted her to stop making excuses for behavior she knows is unacceptable, and to stop acting like anyone who expects basic courtesy from her children is personally attacking her. I told her I love those kids, but I refuse to pretend that tantrums, destroyed property, and zero gratitude are acceptable just to keep peace in the family. Before I left, I told her I was sorry for posting about our family issues on Reddit, and that I understood why she saw it as a betrayal. But I also said I wasn't sorry for what I wrote, because it was the truth. And maybe hearing it from strangers finally showed her what everyone else has been too polite to say directly. Laura said she needs time to think, and that she'll talk to Mark about possibly seeking professional help. I don't know if anything will actually change, but at least I finally said everything I'd been holding in for years.